250 Canadians just landed on the edge of the Sahara Desert, joining the United Nations mission to Mali in West Africa, the UN's deadliest operation. Since it began 5 years ago, at least 170 peacekeepers have been killed here. And Mali follows what's become a familiar pattern of peacekeeping. It's the world's poorest countries that are doing most of the work and paying the heaviest price.
If you look at the missions over the last few years, it has been, as you would expect, it's been the developing countries who have their troops on the front line, who take the lion's share of the casualties.
But it wasn't always that way. In fact, not long ago, the world's wealthiest countries led the way in the world of peacekeeping and shared the risk. In fact, for a long time, Canada was number one. Canada proposed the first major UN peacekeeping mission during the Suez Crisis in 1956. That earned Canadian Foreign Minister Lester B. Pearson the Nobel Peace Prize. And Canada remained a top peacekeeping country through the Cold War and into the 90s. In '94, on the heels of the Rwandan genocide, the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, the US, UK, France, Russia, and China, provided 20% of the total peacekeeping personnel. But fast forward a decade, and that contribution plummeted to 5%.
The West remains, frankly, very reluctant to engage in any of these large UN missions.
At its peacekeeping peak in the early 90s, Canada provided more than 3,000 troops. But by early 2018, that number had dwindled to 41, a new low. And these 250 Canadians now in Mali represent a fraction of the mission's 15,000 UN personnel. Before Mali, South Sudan was Canada's largest contribution, with about a dozen troops. Nick Coughlin is Canada's former ambassador.
But we have not wanted to put our people in that situation. The message certainly I received in Ottawa from my time was we do not wish to run the risk of casualties, quote, in a place like South Sudan. It's simply not important enough.
As wealthy Western countries step back from peacekeeping, poorer countries are picking up the slack. In fact, some of the world's top peacekeeping countries are also among the poorest on Earth. Ethiopia, Rwanda, and Nepal top the UN's list, but rank near the bottom when it comes to GDP per capita. And their reasons for sending large numbers of UN troops aren't always altruistic.
Well, at the risk of sounding rather cynical, a lot of the poor countries do make quite a lot of money from participating in UN missions.
Each month, the UN pays the equivalent of about 1,800 Canadian dollars per peacekeeper. That money goes not to the troops directly, but to their country's government.
It's tragic that something like peace should become monetarized, but it has been. Many of the troop contributing countries are not dependent, but a lot of their GDP comes from the money they get from peacekeeping, which is why they're so keen to do it.
The result is often UN peacekeepers who are poorly trained and equipped, facing increasingly complicated conflicts such as Mali, where up to 20 different rebel groups are battling for control.
And so basically what you're doing is you're putting peacekeepers into situations where often there isn't really a peace to keep.
Canada's UN mission to Mali will end after 1 year, but most expect the conflict here to drag on for many years to come, and peacekeepers from mostly poor countries to continue to pay with their lives. Hey, thanks for watching Global News. If you enjoyed what you saw, please like the video. You can also hit the subscribe button on your screen to make sure that you get all the latest international news and trending video.